Coffee, the black nectar of the gods. But is your favorite morning pick-me-up also suitable for your best pre-workout nutrition? Is it going to be the thing that could replace that expensive pre-workout supplement as the thing that's going to drive you to better workouts, more gains in the gym, more progressive overload, and ultimately to a badass physique in the future? That's what we're going to be answering on today's episode of the podcast. But before we launch into all of this pre-workout caffeine-fueled detail, firstly, let me say, if you are watching on YouTube, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification button as well. If you are listening on a podcast platform, subscribe, leave a rating and a review, especially if you're on iTunes. That would be absolutely freaking awesome. As usual as well, there's a bunch of links in the show notes that you can click on to access calorie calculators. You can get free guides. You can go over to ironparadisefitness.com, read some more training and nutrition articles. You can even find out about my one-to-one coaching program, the Lean Life Method. So if you're someone who is struggling to lose weight, build muscle right now, and you want to really kind of crack through some of the obstacles that you're facing right now, you can check out the program and you can inquire about coming on board as a client of mine, one-to-one. We're working together to help you achieve that body that you've been striving for and live that leaner, healthier life for good. But enough of that. Let's start talking about pre-workout. So can you ditch that expensive pre-workout supplement, that thing that looks like nuclear waste on steroids? Can you ditch that and still get decent results in the gym by just having a humble cup of coffee? That's what we're going to answer. Now, to answer this question, we really need to understand what's in your average pre-workout drink. Because when you're having potentially just a coffee, obviously the main sort of ingredient you're getting from that could potentially help your workout is caffeine. So all of these other supplements have lots of other ingredients in them. So we need to kind of understand what they are and see if A, they're evidence-based and do they provide any benefit? B, do you have to have them pre-workout? And then do you actually have any more benefit from those than just having the coffee itself? They're like the two or three questions that we need to answer in order to really kind of get to the crux of whether you can just exchange it for a double espresso or something. Now, when we're looking at most pre-workouts, now there are so many on the market these days that you couldn't really realistically break them all down and go ingredient by ingredient. So we have to take a broad brush approach to what are the ingredients that you see across multiple different pre-workout products. Now, the ones that you will see potentially are, you'll see creatine in a lot of them, you'll see beta-alanine in a lot of them, you'll see citrulline malate in a lot of them, and you'll obviously also see caffeine in quite a few of them as well. And so then starts to beg the question, okay, well, what are we looking at in terms of the research around all this sort of other stuff? Now, before we kind of launch into that part of it, let me say that, what about all the other ingredients? So what I've listed there are pretty much the evidence-based ingredients that you see in most pre-workouts. Other ingredients exist, but they either have limited, questionable, or no evidence to support their efficacy in terms of supplementing with them. So the ones I've just extracted for you there, the 3 or 4 or whatever it was that I've extracted for you there, they are the evidence-based supplements that if you took them, you would probably get some benefit. Now, to various different degrees, like for example, creatine is thoroughly more tested than something like citrulline malate. So we're much more confident that creatine is going to give you some form of result than we are with citrulline malate, which has got some for and some against research in terms of whether it does or doesn't have a particular benefit. Now, the key thing when we're actually talking about, let's assume for now that those 3 or 4 supplements work. We know creatine works, we know beta-alanine in certain situations gives us some benefit, we know citrulline malate does, and we know caffeine does. So in those situations, we know that there is some benefit to various different degrees. But beta-alanine, citrulline malate, and creatine are not needed pre-workout. You don't have to have those pre-workout in order to get the benefit from them. So if you take creatine, for example, 5 grams per day at any time of day will get you that benefit. You don't have to have it pre-workout. In fact, there is some research to say that having it post-workout might be marginally more beneficial than any other time for the day, but simply having it at some point in the day is the actual key thing that you want to focus in on. So going down to the minutiae of, having it in your pre-workout is probably offering you no benefit. So when you're thinking about purchasing supplements, you're thinking about all of this sort of stuff, well, maybe having creatine in that product is just adding to the cost. Every ingredient that puts in costs that company money to make it. So therefore, the more ingredients, potentially the more costly it is. And potentially you're not going to get the 5 grams that's ideal in terms of your creatine intake. So bear that in mind. Creatine, you don't need that pre-workout. Beta-alanine is the same. Now, beta-alanine is that supplement that gives you the tingles. It makes you feel like your skin's crawling with 1,000 ants. It gives you kind of that itchy feeling, something like that. A lot of people take that as almost like that's the fucking signal that shit, I am on this now. The tingles are here. I'm fucking ready to work out. Let's go. It's just psychological. There's no, that paresthesia, that kind of tingling sensation does not mean you're good to fucking go and lift a load of weight. It means nothing in terms of the readiness of that supplement to have some effect. Now, when you're taking beta-alanine, you typically go through a loading phase as well. So effectively, if you've not gone through a loading phase with beta-alanine, you're not getting the most out of it. And that's going to be especially the case if you're just taking it through a pre-workout. So if you've been taking pre-workouts religiously for years and years and years, okay, you're going to be loaded by now. But if it's a new thing to you, then you're probably not going to be loaded. So you're not going to get much benefit from that beta-alanine in those early days. So now beta-alanine really is about 80 milligrams per kilo for about 4 to 10 weeks. And that's like a really broad thing. So maybe you want to split the difference and say for 7 weeks or something like that. And you're going to have 80 milligrams per kilo per day. And that's going to be quite a lot in terms of giving you that sort of paresthesia, tingling sensation. So what you need to do is you need to apportion that out, and I would say across at least 4 different servings across the day, maybe more, depending on your tolerance for that kind of tingling sensation. That's going to get you that loading phase. Now, once you go into maintenance, you're going to drop down to 40 milligrams per kilo per day. And for that, again, you don't need that pre-workout. It doesn't work acutely, i.e. it's not a case of you take it, you get the benefit. It doesn't work like that. So again, you can split that over 2 to 4 servings throughout the day and still get the benefit from it. So for me personally, if you want to know how I take beta-alanine, because I have, roughly speaking, 2 shakes per day, i.e. 1 pre-workout, 1 post-workout, I put my beta-alanine in the pre-workout and in the post-workout, and I also put the creatine in the post-workout. But I'm not putting that beta-alanine in the pre-workout to get some instant benefit from it. All I'm doing is putting it in there because that's when it's most convenient. And I take creatine, beta-alanine, and citrulline malate when I fancy taking it. Citrulline malate to me is not an essential supplement, but I just take it when it's most convenient, because it's convenient for me when I'm having a shake to take the individual powder, put it into a shake, whiz it up with protein and with banana, milk and all that sort of stuff. It tastes fine. Citrulline malate tastes like fucking ass. So I would recommend mixing it with something else, but that's a different story. The same thing therefore happens with citrulline malate. You see that you can again have it at different times of the day. Sometimes if you read the back of the supplements, they'll say have it with breakfast and all this sort of stuff. Again, it's pretty much just have it during the day. Just make sure you actually get it if that's what you want to take. Now, again, I'll haul you back to the beginning that citrulline malate has this sort of like questionable efficacy. There's like some that say yes, some that say, yeah, no real benefit to it whatsoever. So we're still in this sort of limbo of does it or doesn't it? We don't kind of really have a definitive answer for it. So it's one of those supplements where if you got the cash and you don't care whether it's going to offer you some benefit or not, then go for it. But if you kind of maybe watching the pennies or you care about that sort of stuff, maybe it's not the best option. Now, that leaves us with caffeine. So caffeine does work acutely. You take it, you get benefit. You have that alertness, that wake up, you have that reduced in the rate of perceived exertion. So potentially exercise feels a little bit easier, adding you to lift a little bit more weight. There's some evidence to say it increases with force production, with strength, and other sorts of benefits to improving your workouts. Now, you would particularly take that 45 minutes to 60 minutes before training. So these people who rock up to the gym and they purchase a pre-workout supplement then and there and drink it and then go train, well, they're getting the benefit from that after they've worked out. So it kind of makes it's pointless to do it that way around. You've got to be sort of timing this stuff to, if you are going to supplement with this sort of stuff, make sure you do it at the right times that's beneficial. Otherwise, you're just pissing money up the wall. So when it comes to caffeine, you're typically looking at anywhere between 2 to 6 milligrams per kilo. Now, if you were 80 kilos, that would mean that you'd be anywhere between 160 to 480 milligrams. And if you looked at the average espresso in terms of the caffeine content of that, that's like 2 espressos versus 7 espressos. Now, like 6 milligrams per kilo is like right at the top end of what you'd have. I think you'd be buzzing off your tits for days if you were having 6 milligrams per kilo. You wouldn't want that every day. It would certainly put you in a case of you fucking have heart palpitations and fucking high blood pressure probably. Lots of you probably have anxieties at that level. It's just not the level you need on a regular basis. So really kind of, if you look at many, like a caffeine pill, probably got about 200 milligrams. If you look at many pre-workouts, anywhere like 300-ish milligrams. So it's still quite a significant hit of caffeine, especially when you kind of relate it back to how many espressos that's going to be. You've also got to think about like timing of this shit, because sleep is way more important than any supplement. So if you're having a boatload of caffeine before you train, but that's quite late into the evening, that's not going to be out of your system when you're trying to actually sleep and get high quality sleep, which is actually going to get more benefit for you. So that's a key thing to remember. So to answer the question, a double espresso, for example, again, depending on the size of the individual, might get what you need in terms of caffeine. And it might be also a little bit more enjoyable. But the other thing to remember is that you don't need a pre-workout anyway. You could take beta-alanine, creatine, citrulline malate, all away from pre-workout and still get all of the benefits from it. Then when you think about all the other ingredients that are in your pre-workout, maybe don't have any evidence to them that's substantial enough for it to be considered worthwhile investing in, you start to then build up a picture where actually I'm only left with caffeine. So what's maybe the best way for me to get caffeine into my nutrition if that's what I want to do? Maybe it is via a coffee. Maybe it is via a caffeine pill or something like that that's going to give you that without having the cost of all those other supplements or those other ingredients added into that supplement as well. Now, when you're thinking about caffeine, now I want you to think about like there is a degree of like you can build up a tolerance to it. So in effect, it like loses its effect. If you're having it all the time, every single day, every single workout, over time it loses its effect. So really you kind of want to save it for those important sessions. Save it for those important workouts, events, sporting activities. That's when you want that real hit of caffeine. Now, if it's a case that you habitually have coffee during the day, it might make sense just to have one of those before you actually train. But bear in mind the timing of it, like I've said before, you don't want to fuck up your sleep just to have some caffeine. And also be aware of your habitual caffeine intake as well. So if you think about like that, 6 milligrams is a fucking lot of caffeine. You know, you wouldn't really think about having 7 espressos a day. So when you're thinking about, okay, well, I'm taking this pre-workout supplement, but how much caffeine am I having throughout the day as well on top of that? You really want to think about like overall health and, you know, sleep. I keep saying it, but it's so important. So the answer to the original exam question of could you have coffee as an adequate substitute for your pre-workout? Yes, you absolutely could, because you can take most of those ingredients away from pre-workout and still get the same benefit. And you don't have to have pre-workout at all. So you could save yourself a whole shit ton of money at the same time. So hopefully this helped you. Hopefully this answered a few questions for you. If it did, come find me on Instagram, drop me a DM, say hi, tag me in your Instagram stories, whatever it is you want to do. And don't forget to leave those rating reviews, hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube as well. Now, before I go, all I'm going to say is thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. Keep living the lean life, and I'll see you for the next episode of the show.